What's up guys, my name is Courtney Budson and this is What's for Din. Today I'm going to be arming you guys with a killer Super Bowl recipe. Today we're going to be making wonton pizza rolls. Now I know a lot of you guys go to the grocery store, you grab a bag of these frozen pizza rolls, you throw them in the oven and you make them, you eat them. They're delicious and I'll admit it, but I'm telling you right now, they're not as good as these. And on top of that, pre-made pizza rolls tend to have additives and extra chemicals that you don't want in your body, with ingredients that have names that are this long and you can't even understand. With these, you know what's in them, they taste delicious, and they're so easy to make. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so the first thing you wanna do is start by preparing all of your ingredients. So you can see here, I'm shredding some mozzarella cheese. Now you can get pre-shredded if you want, but I don't like buying pre-shredded because they put a coating on it to keep it from caking, and the whole idea of this is to avoid chemicals. So I'm just throwing it in my small food processor, and I'm just gonna keep grinding it until it's nice and fine, almost like just a dust, because I want to be able to fit as much cheese as possible into each wonton roll. So you can see that's nice and fine. And then I'm gonna do the exact same thing with the pepperoni. I like to cut it a little bit to give my food processor a head start, and then I just blend it up in the same way until it's a nice ground beef texture. And then of course you're gonna need some pizza sauce, so you can either get store-bought or you can make your own, which is way better. And if you want a recipe for that, just check out my previous video and I will link it at the top of the screen. And you're also gonna need some wonton wrappers. Now you can see this is the brand I get. I wanted to show you just in case you were curious and wanted to know. So what I'm doing is laying a wonton wrapper down, and I'm taking a little bit of water and just gliding my finger along the edges. That way we can seal the wonton wrapper very thoroughly. And I'm putting a tiny amount of pizza sauce. The more you put, the harder it is to roll. So just kind of play with it and see what works best for you. Gonna add a little bit of the pepperoni and a little bit of the mozzarella cheese. And then we're gonna apply another wonton wrapper on top, and we're gonna seal it kind of like a ravioli. Just make sure you press down those edges really well. And if any sauce seeps out, it's okay, it's no big deal, just wipe it off. And then I'm just applying a little bit of water on the top portion, because as you roll this, the water will help it to stick together. That way it doesn't unravel when you put it in the oil or when you're trying to bake it. And then I'm going to roll it up and then just continue that process with the rest of them, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm going to show you two different ways to cook this. I'm going to show you how to fry them and bake them. So to fry them, you want to have a nice heavy-duty pan. I'm using a Dutch oven, as you can see here, and you can use any oil you really want besides olive oil. Don't use olive oil, it's not good for frying. Here I'm using a peanut oil, but you can use something like coconut oil is really great too. It's really up to you what you want to use. So fill the pan enough just to be able to submerge the wonton rolls. You don't have to like have a huge gallon of oil, just enough to submerge the pizza rolls so they cook evenly. And then you want to make sure that you're bringing that up to a really high temperature, so around 350 degrees to 375. If your oil's not hot enough, then your wonton rolls are going to be soggy and gross, and you really want to get that crisp edge. So once my oil is nice and hot, I'm going to go ahead and throw in my pizza rolls. I like to do 3 at a time and no more than that, because if you add too much at the same time, it's going to bring down the temperature of the oil, and then you're going to be left with a soggy mess. So I like to cook them about a minute or so on each side. Now you want to try to flip them, but they're kind of top heavy, so they're not going to flip the greatest, but just move them around so that they cook nice and evenly. You'll know when they're done when they have a really nice golden color on the outside. If you want it darker, make it darker. If you don't want it as golden, it's really up to you. And then very carefully, you can take them out and put them on a plate lined with some paper towel. That way all the oil drips off and you're not eating a ton of oil. And yes, if you're wondering, that is a burger flipping spatula for the grill. I do not have a frying spatula, so I use what works, and it works perfectly for me. So personally, I like to fry them. I think the texture is way better than to bake them, but if you don't want to go through all that trouble, I'm going to show you how to bake them. So what you want to do is have a baking sheet lined with some parchment paper, and using a pastry brush, you're going to want to take that same oil and brush it on both sides of the wonton rolls. Then you're going to want to throw them in a 400-degree oven, and I like to cook them for about 20 minutes, sometimes less than that, depending on how much I filled them. And you also want to make sure that you flip them halfway through so that they get nice and crunchy on both sides. So here is the delicious, crunchy final product. I cannot wait to taste these. I'm not gonna lie, I had one. Okay, I cheated. I know I'm not supposed to taste it before the taste test, but I couldn't help myself, okay? That's the thing about frying food, is as you're frying, you're taking some out and you're putting some in and you're putting some in your mouth. You can't help it, okay? It's just a side effect of making pizza rolls. Now before I taste test it, I wanna show you guys the difference between a fried and a baked one. You can totally see a difference in texture. To me, in my opinion, the fried one is way better. It's just the texture is everything to me, but this is still amazing. Here we go, this is a nice crunchy one. You hear that crunch? I hear that crunch. Cap'n Crunch is shivering in his shoes right now. I mean, come on, can you really turn this down? Look how delicious that looks. I can't. And the best part about these is you can freeze them the same way that you would store-bought ones. So once you fry them up, throw them in a freezer bag, put them in the freezer until you're ready to make them. Then you can preheat the oven to about 400 degrees. Throw them in there. And there you go. It's just like you refried them again. They're absolutely delicious. So if you guys do want to recreate this recipe, just look below in the description. I'll list all the measurements as well as the written instructions. And if you did like this video, don't forget to smack that like button as well as turn on the little bell notifications. That way you get notified every single time I upload a video. So as always, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Let me grab my pizza roll. You know how the ending goes. I said goodbye, I shoved the food in. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and we'll see you next time. Peace.